The conference is now being recorded.
Good morning, everyone. This is the fiscal year 2015-16 Grant Guidelines webinar meeting for today, October 8th, 2014. At this time, if you are able, you can see the slides, and we're going to go through beginning with the welcome for the session today. All right, so welcome. My name is Valerie Payne. I'm the WTCS Grants Coordinator for the System Office. Just an overview for the agenda. In general, Session 1 was the new Grant Managers Training that was held this morning, webinar. And then Session 2 and 3 will cover GPR and Perkins as the dates are noted there for you. Today we're going to begin with the General Purpose Revenue Grant and cover the slides thereafter, where you'll have an opportunity to provide your questions throughout the presentation, and then also note that in the chat window, if you so choose, below. If you're having technical difficulties, feel free and dial *0. Otherwise, if you could please participate willingly, that would be great. Thereafter, we are going to begin with general purpose revenue, and we will begin with the first part. Just a general overview. The general purpose revenue grants are due by January 9th of 2015, with the exception of the apprentice-related instruction and So first off, we're going to cover the apprentice-related instruction slides.
I'm not Katie. This is Sandy Schmidt. Katie is out, and I'm going to be covering the apprenticeship-related instruction grants. There are, if you want to advance to the next slide, thank you. There are two specific grants in this category. One is for system-wide curriculum. The other is for direct instruction support. These are kind of like a special grants that aren't usually treated as part of the grant process. And the education director for the apprenticeship position, which is open right now, will be working with these grants. Instruction support. We go through every year. There's a committee that meets to divide up what that funding is. And then for the curriculum development grant, the projects are all decided for that one. If you want to advance to the next slide. There's nothing that's changed with these grant categories. So I don't know if anybody has any questions they can ask myself, or they can ask Tim Weir, and we should have somebody in this position before the grants are completed. Or else I should say Katie Roberts is also a great person. I do have to mention in the curriculum grant, we're not funding out-of-state travel. There's no subcontracting is allowed, and equipment is okay with prior approval from the grant manager. So the plan right now is it's either Tim or Katie up until we get somebody else in the position, and then we'll just throw them to the fire that day.
Great, thank you.
Good morning, all, and welcome. Thanks for being with us today. The next category is career pathways, and both Mark Johnson and myself are here. I'm Ann Westrick, and we're going to go quickly through the information. Not a lot of changes, but just want to give you a little bit of an update. On this particular slide, it's talking about the funds available and limitations and outcomes and deliverables. What we really want to zero in on is the individual application combined could be up to $400,000, and if you do a consortium application, it must be submitted up to 600,000. So that's just kind of a clarification from the last round. As far as outcome and deliverables, the piece that we want to bring to your attention today is really the idea of more emphasis on the identification of the connected cluster and pathway. In many instances in the first round of grants, it was sort of talked about, but it wasn't really targeted on the cluster and the pathway area in which you were developing. So that's kind of a key point to bring to your attention. And then that same parallel follows with the student level training outcomes, where it's really all about identifying the career pathway that the grant will be working with. And those are really the two main parts from that particular piece. Before Mark goes on and talks about the next one, I just wanted to also remind you that everything we're talking about today can be found in pages 9 through 11 in the grants guidelines. So that's an excellent place to go back and review and go through all these pieces. Mark will now take the next slide.
Thanks, Ann. Hi, everybody. Mark Johnson. Again, as Ann mentioned, very minor changes to the career pathways category. However, with the allowable activities section, it is essentially the same as last year, but note there are two noteworthy changes. We're really looking for new and innovative or expanded instruction and new and innovative or expanded career exploration. These funds are intended to help you continue to innovate and develop your career pathways system at your location, and they're not just funding for existing status quo activities. We expect and encourage you to innovate, create, submit some new ideas, etc. The section that says application components is just kind of a standard section that you'll see in the different grant categories with some specific instructions about item 13A and 14. I won't go into detail on those. Those are very standard, and Valerie can help with any of those. The application review, it is important to note that the criteria form for the different GPR grant categories, there's some variations now depending on the different grant category, and Ann and I did make some slight changes to the review criteria for career pathway grants. You can see the link there to take you to look at the various review criteria for the different grants, and we encourage you to go and look at those review criteria because, for instance, ours has a slightly different point distribution than it did in the past, and there may be an additional bullet or two that you need to respond to. And Valerie, who's running the show, is showing the review criteria for career pathways. So please make a note of it. We are not using the standard review criteria that we did in the past. In career pathways, it is slightly different. And that's pretty much all that Ann and I have for this particular category. And Valerie, I don't know if you want to entertain questions now or later. We can just move on if you want.
If there are any questions, feel free to respond to those questions right now. If not, we will proceed to the next category. If you so choose to if you happen to have some questions throughout, feel free to add those to the chat and we will address those as well.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. This is Jim Mackey with a cold, so enjoy listening to my voice. Sorry for that. Katie Roberts, like you know, is out today, so she will not be able to join us, but she is my new co-grant manager on this category of the core industry grant. Just wanted to remind you this grant is for WTCS programs in core industry areas, so it helps us provide industry-relevant education and training using rigorous curricula, human technology, and related services in system board approved programs. And that's terminology you need to remember. Last year we did end up with a case where a grant was not presented with a system approved program, so we have to make sure that with a $6 million category, last year we had $12 million of ask, so it does become rather competitive. It's a 1-year grant category. If you do have a 2-year, 3-year plan, remember that it always becomes a 1-year grant. So you can do the same area, the same program, 2 years in a row. It's always a new grant to us, so it would have to have other types of activities. Let's see what slide I'm on. Okay. All right, so we are looking at the allowable activities. If you, on this slide, item number 1, we had a small change on that. Just 1 minute. Okay, thank you. In item number 1, we added the lease of technologies and equipment as something that you can utilize. Last year it was just for the purchase. Item number 2, there was actually no change. Item number 3, no change. Item number 4, no change. And item number 5, no change. We do want to emphasize, though, with instruction that if you are just expanding a program, adding different sections, additional sections, make it an improvement in your capability there, you need to discuss with us how that will be continued after the grant year. So you cannot really just provide us a request to expand sections. You need to build on that and give us an explanation of how that will continue. Item 6 was added this year. Basic skills or developmental instruction is allowed as long as the foundation or two are integrated with existing system program. So that has been added this year. Okay, applicable components. The application, so with item number 4 in the project narrative, there was no change to that. With item 5, though, and something I wanted to really point out here is that these application components do become very important on the review criteria. Again, later on we'll probably show the review criteria, but they become items that get checked off on the review criteria, and if it's something that is missing, it could end up not being, we could end up not allowing the grant to be reviewed. So pay attention to these application components. So application component 5, the industry drivers. Really want to describe what industry drivers necessitated these changes that you're requesting. 6, documented evidence. We will require that there is some kind of documented evidence that the changes you are asking for are required. And we prefer something that has been, although it's not said, we prefer documented evidence that is within the current year or something reasonable. If you do have something that maybe is 2 years old, at least explain why you're presenting something the 2016 grant year that was developed in 2014. There might be a reason. We just would like to know that. And item 7, the ad hoc advisory committee roster. Please, you have to have documented evidence of a advisory committee, an ad hoc committee, or some form of industry organization, and we would like to know the names and the companies that are involved, so we can use that as part of our review. Do we have the review criteria? Okay. Now, I don't have the review criteria up, but I just wanted to mention a couple of things on it. It is on the website, so you can go ahead and look at that at some time. The review criteria, so you are bringing it up? Okay, it's being brought up right now. Originally, the review criteria for the core grant was supposed to be based on a 100-point scale with 5 points possible for preferential points. Those points are for being supportive of career pathway bridges. I noticed actually in preparation for this, we put down 8 points for that. So in reality, it's a 97-point scale with 8 points for extra credit. But that's essentially what we have going on with that. So I wanted to point that out before anyone pointed that out to me. The next thing I want to discuss are about 3 questions that have come in already today. And we'll also bring up the slides again to see if there are other questions that you are sending us in the chat box. The first question was, does this include technical diplomas and embedded technical diplomas? The answer to that is yes, as long as they are system-approved programs or diplomas. The next question is, under funding available and limitations, the inter-district collaborative application, must this include a partner WTCS technical college? Would an app that includes partner organization or K-12 school district collaboration be considered as collaborative application? The answer to that is actually it has to include other technical colleges. It does not exclude using or being collaborative with K-12 schools or other partner organizations. One change that is in the application or in the guidelines is that we specifically in the glossary talked about what is a collaborative inter-district collaboration. Actually, we use 2 different terms, inter and intra. We're trying to get to the to using building this with other colleges. So the answer to that is it must be with other technical colleges, but you can include K-12 schools or you can include other businesses or organizations. And the last question that came in, major, minor, or lease may be funded up to 30% of the total approved project cost. Does this include all equipment, instructional, technology, and other? And the answer is yes, it includes all equipment. Last year we had a little difficulty splitting instructional versus other equipment. This year we are just laying out 40% of the grant can be equipment, regardless of instructional or other. And I see a question up on the, it was addressed? Okay, great. Then I won't bother reading it. Are there other questions, or do you have some that you would like to ask now? Okay, my work here is done. Who's next?
Jim, we have a question.
Okay. My work here is not done.
Welcome back.
Hi, Jim. It's Ann Habercorn from Fox Valley. Thanks so much. Appreciate the information. I have a question as I compare the career pathways section to the core industry section. I understand that core industry is for system-approved programs only. How about career pathways? And I'm not sure if you're the person to answer that.
I think, Ann, are you up there? We'll have Ann come up here and respond to that one.
Thanks.
It's a move to the speakerphone is what we're doing here, if you could see the movement that we're making. So your question was if it had to be part of an approved program, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you are developing new career pathways, so you need to identify the cluster and the pathway that you are working with. If it's part of a brand new program, that program would have to be established first before you could really create a cluster and a pathway and all of those particular pieces with it. If you're looking to create a career pathway for a program that's going through the approval process at the same time, We don't say anywhere that that can't happen, but we would need to be aware of that because you wouldn't want to develop a career pathway if the program never goes through approval. So I think our recommendation would be to develop the career pathway and the bridges and all of the coursework connected with an approved program, but we don't necessarily say that, and it doesn't mean that we can't work with the other pieces, but if the new program that you're developing doesn't get approved, then it's not a good use of your resources.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, I have another question too. This is Fox Valley. When it says that the combined, we can have up to 3 applications, 2 individual and 1 collaboration. When it says that the combined application can be up to, I think it's 500,000, does that mean that we can submit 1 application for up to 500,000?
No, that means you can apply, each of the single applications for your college can be up to 500,000.
Then what is the limit on 1 application?
That's why, I'm sorry. That is what I mean. Is the limit on 1 is 500,000, so with 2 it could be $1 million, but it has to be 500,000 on each.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, I have questioning looks in the room, so Debbie, do you have a question? Okay. All of a sudden I'm being corrected, so I'm looking at my instructions. And, okay, so I've been corrected, so let's go back and say it clearly. Individual applications combined may total up to 500,000, and I'm sorry I said it incorrectly. So together they are 500,000. It does not say that one could be just 100,000 and the other one 400,000. So I guess that means that one could be 100,000, the other 400,000, and you would be fine. So, thank you for that correction. Or one can be 500,000. Correct. Anything else I can muddle up?
Great.
All right, thanks. We'll be in the room if more questions come up.
Next, we're going to go to developing market.
Good morning, everybody. This is Tim Weir, manager of the Developing Markets, formerly known as New Markets, for those of you that are keeping score. You will find all the grant guidelines updated as it says on the slide there on pages 16 and 19 of the grant guidelines. Just a couple things to go over. This is just for a little quick review and overview, this is a $1.5 million grant. Limited 2 applications, maximum of $200,000 total, whether it be 1 or 2. Grant awards, just like the big shift, obviously, this time is that all these are competitive, which would include, first, second, third year, whatever that might be. Some people had drawn some parallel to the old NEO. This is different. You need to apply each time for these grants, but the first year can go up to 100, second year up to 75% funded, and third year up to 40. One of the kind of confusions maybe of last time, just a couple to make sure they're clear, very similar to what Jim said in a few instances. You must have an approved program in this area to apply for grants. The deadline did change for that approval of that program. We had programs being approved right up into March, which butted right up against the deadline for the grant, which made it very confusing last time. So that deadline for the approval of a program must be approved by our board by January of 2015. So we have some time to, really just make sure that it's in place. and we have something to go with. We had probably 4 or 5 last time out of the, I want to say 16 applications were disqualified right at that point just because they didn't have a program in place. So that's a big one there. There was some question also about this new and developing definition. If you have a program that was been approved up to maybe 1 or 2 years, those are still considered developing and new if no students have been put in those programs. So if that program is new, and by new, like I said, the definition would be no students have been placed in those programs, that's still considered new for purposes of applying for money. So the outcomes and deliverables, like many of the other categories, is pretty straightforward at this one, 3 basic categories. The creation of relevant and rigorous curriculum, professional development for staff, and obviously the delivery of instruction. And again, that delivery could be like with a program that's been approved but no students have been placed in it. Next slide. Allowable activities. New program implementation, of course, in support of Career Pathways, our system-wide initiative. Curriculum design, whether that be a DACM, TSA, whatever that might be. Delivery of instruction, which we've talked about. And one specific one, and this may be the same in other grant categories, that in your statement of need, if your program does require some type of accreditation, that needs to be stated in the statement of need as well, specifically. 2 FAQs that came in today, actually they're the same FAQs that came up for industry, but I'll address them as in relation to developing markets. Technology and software is fundable up to 50%, but specifically it's listed in the grant as pertinent to the new program. So make sure that if it is, if you're going to be purchasing any of those items, that they're relevant and pertinent to the new program. And then the other question, as Jim mentioned before, in core and industry, does this include technical diplomas and ETDs or embedded technical diplomas? And that is yes. Both included. And that is my update. I'd be happy to field questions. For developing markets, if we modify the existing program drastically,
outside from Costco.
Does it still count as new to the district? Great question. That it does not. It needs to be a new program. So you can't, and I think, actually that question came up, and I don't remember who sent it in, but that was one of the big differences between how NEO, I guess that was an option with that, and with developing markets, that's not an option.
Maybe not. You think for pathway, huh?
Well, maybe not.
Just as a reminder, you might want to mute your phone. We're getting a lot of private conversations coming across the conference call.
I have a question.
Okay.
Funds available and limitations, number 10. Did I understand you correctly that technology, hardware, and software are allowable if they're pertinent to the program?
That is correct, up to 50%.
Up to 50%. So number 10 and 9 could be combined then? How would that work? Say we need
I don't have the grant guidelines in front of me. Hang on just a second.
Okay.
Yeah, I can get it right now. Yeah, that does seem to be contradictory. Let me look into that and I'll get back with you. Who was that?
You. This is Fox Valley.
Very good. Who at Fox Valley?
This is Sheila Kaler.
Sheila.
And this is Valerie Payne. We will post the question and response on the Q&A after this session.
I'll get a better answer and get back with you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Who's ready for a formula grant? Yay! Good morning, everyone. This is Sarah Kavanaugh for the Professional Development Grant Guidelines. One quick change you'll know right off the top is we don't have a co-manager for this fiscal year grant, so any questions should be coming to me. We did make some changes to the funds available and limitations section. That's where most of the changes actually happen, so I'm just going to go through those real quick. For instructional equipment, we wanted to make sure everyone understood that encompasses both major and minor equipment to include software. On guideline or on limitation number 9, we wanted to point out that travel does not include registration fees. Just like last year, registration fees will be included with a stipend limitation. Number 10, food and refreshments are not allowable consumable supplies and will not be funded. Similarly, we will not be funding any substitute instruction. We've better defined stipend. We learned from last year that is a pretty broad term and interpreted pretty broadly amongst the district. We added it to the glossary, so I would also encourage you to refer to the glossary if you're not sure on a specific definition. We defined it to mean mentor fees, internships, honorarias, contract fees for presenters or facilitators, and fellowships. We've added an other category which cannot exceed 10% of the total allocated amount, and it must be specifically described in the grant. And anything under other must not fit into one of the other categories. We did try and see some creativity with that last year. And no matter what it is, it cannot be food in other or anywhere else. For outcomes deliverables and allowable activities, we didn't make any changes there. Again, we'd like to encourage everyone to be innovative here, start thinking outside the box a little bit. You may want to go speak with your faculty quality assurance system team representative. I know that they're really looking for funds to use in professional development in that area. The only other thing to go over is just a reminder that on data collection reports that this grant does not apply to client reporting. Otherwise, that's about it. I did review the review criteria. We made some revisions based on this being a formula versus a competitive grant. So if you're interested in that, you can take a look at that also. Is there any questions? All right, then. Thank you very much.
Yeah, for my... If I could, if Tom will indulge me just for a second. This is Tim Weir again about developing markets. I reread number 9 and number 10. Number 10 actually refers to like warranties, service agreements that you would purchase with the equipment. Those are not covered, but the equipment themselves is. But no additional fees if you would want to buy. You buy a simulator, a health simulator, you can't buy the warranty or the service package with it. That's the difference. Hopefully that will clear that up. That's it.
Okay, good morning everybody. This is Tom Heffron, and we're going to cover just 3 slides on the GPR student support areas, but first of all, we want to thank you for all your efforts. We know this is a relatively new process, new funding mechanism, and a lot of it is also competitive. So we know at the district level it requires a lot more coordination and cooperation by lots of different people. So we know that and we greatly appreciate your efforts. For student support, first slide shows the 2 co-managers, Karen Showers and myself, and our contact information. The guidelines, and we're just going to highlight a couple things on page 23 to 25. First of all, technical assistance is available upon district request. Last year, Karen and I, we had conference calls with 11 of the districts upon their request. as well as emails, technical assistance. Karen and I do this together. So if there's any questions from the districts, we always get back to you from both Karen and myself. If you look on page 23 of the guidelines, the first thing that you need to do is make sure that you really understand and read the first statement under purpose, where it says this is to create, expand, or implement innovative methods to provide direct services to students enrolled in post-secondary courses and ABEELL. So that was kind of expanded a little bit, but again, this is direct services to students. This does not have to be totally new. There was some confusion about that last year. So if you have some questions about that, please let us know. A couple things under student support. This is a $3 million pot. It is highly competitive. All districts applied this year for the funds. There was a lot more requested, of course, than $3 million. A couple of things that we wanted to highlight under funds available and limitations. Number 5, one application per district, up to $300,000. Number 7, we combined this and said no administrative or indirect costs will be allowed. And number 9, we reworded this for major and minor equipment. So it's the major and minor equipment can be up to 10% of the total grant. That includes assistive technology for students with disabilities. So if you have any questions on that, let us know. I also wanted to point out, though, also number 11 in the guidelines on page 23. We did expand a couple of words in there, including GED, those kind of things that are not allowable under this grant category. So make sure that you look that over. No FTEs can be generated out of this grant. So number 11 is a key thing that all your staff, if they're involved with your discussions at your district, should review. Again, it's 75% GPR funds, 25% local match. The last slide. On page 23 and 24 of your guidelines, we did reword a couple of the outcomes and deliverables, but there are 5 altogether. Just wanted to highlight 3 of them. One was the number 2, successful transition from semester to semester. This is very important with the GPA 2.0. Number 4, it used to say completion of WTCS credential. We now that we have a definition, which, as you know, has been gone through training and announced to the districts the last month. So this is completion of a WTCS pathway certificate. So there is a definition that your district has from our office. So it's not credential, it is pathway certificate. Number 5 deals with about half the grants this year related to transition services for students with disabilities. This is the only, if you do request this funds, these are the only outreach activities you can do in this grant area, and it has to be for students with disabilities, either from the high school or from the community. Just want to also highlight on page 24 that is the same menu of 10 allowable activities that you can do as far as services. Some of them that we highlighted, and it's really up to you as a district to decide, but we listed diversity services, disability services, counseling, case management, advising, tutoring services, veteran services. I mentioned transition services for students with disabilities, and there were some questions about emergency care and transportation. I think about 8 of the districts requested those funds in the past. We did change the language based on district questions, so that's why the language for number 9 relates to emergency dependent care. So it could be someone besides the child that needs some care, and these are emergency funds for that. If you are going to be requesting part of your student support dollars for emergency dependent care and transportation, then the form on page 55 needs to be attached and filled out by the district of your process for that. The last thing on the slide is, again, just like my colleagues here, there is a review criteria for student support grants. You should look that over. We kind of tweaked that a little bit as far as language as well as points. So there is a review criteria for each of our areas here. So with that, any questions?
Hi, I have a question.
Sure.
Go in the guidelines under funds available and limitations, number 11, where it says no funds will be awarded for those activities. What if we put those activities in our match?
No. Because match goes by the same criteria as the guidelines. But it does not say it doesn't have to be cash. It can be in-kind match. That came up this past year. But the match
we can have in-kind match?
Yeah. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say cash. It says just match. At least 25% match will be required.
But you have to have a way to report it.
Yep. And Troy said you have to have a way to report it and document it.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So again, yeah.
It's got to be audited.
So,
yep. And it has to be auditable.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. So if the grant is up to $300,000, we could have a $400,000 grant. 75% is funded at $300,000, and the $100,000 would be the match.
Troy says correct.
Okay.
But that does bring up the issue that there were some, especially if there was a new grant coordinator or a new fiscal person, that some of the districts did need a little bit of technical assistance from Troy to work out the match arrangements.
Okay. What if we put in, activities for this? I'm just trying to think through this. If we want to do this, and maybe we just say we're going to leverage funds to do some of these activities, because we want to help them overcome barriers.
So,
would we want to do that? Would that be auditable if we say we're going to leverage funds?
Sheila, send us an email what you really mean, and we'll get back to you on this one.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Gus Bensky. I'm the newest Ed Director here at the System Office. Thank you for bearing with us so far. I know these aren't always the most exciting if the topic doesn't pertain specifically to you. Next, we're going to talk just a little bit more about workforce advancement training grants. The good news is that the guidelines for this grant category have not changed very much at all. So a lot of the process that you followed the last time around, you're going to find to be very familiar now this time around. Specifically, the GPR grant guidelines, pages 26 through 34, are going to outline the WAT grant guidelines. The purpose of these grants, for those of you who aren't familiar with these already, is really it's to serve as an investment in the development of workers. And training under these grants really need to focus on occupational skills, but can include a combination of occupational, academic, and employability courses. So really they're focusing on incumbent existing workers. Same with the last go-around. This will be $4 million available for the WAT grant, $3.5 million allocated specifically for general business purposes, the remaining $500,000 for small businesses. As I mentioned previously, there are no application process here. One item to note, though, training is expected to begin within 90 days of the award. This hasn't really been given as much attention in years past. However, this time around, we will be looking at that a little bit more closely, so please keep that in mind as you apply. The only other change to the guidelines themselves, it comes in the percentage of the grant that is funded. It no longer contains specific language, including the word match. It merely mentions that it will be funded at 90%. So with that, if you have any additional questions pertaining to your situation for WAT grants, please forward them to me. My email address is on the screen there, and I'll be happy to address them as they come in.
For those of you who are not from the 2 tribal colleges that receive program revenue funds, you can turn away for a couple minutes. I'm just going to present the independent Black Ray and College of Menominee Nation. This grant category, work-based learning grant, is they are the only beneficiary of this grant. Mainly what I want to indicate to both of those colleges that there isn't any changes in the grant guidelines as from the previous year, 2013-14. So, and the only changes to this grant category has to do with the accountability piece. That now, instead of submitting a mid-year report in the end-of-year report, there is a tri-annual report. And you need to look at the grant guidelines to figure out the dates for those tri-annual report. I'm quite sure that the first one is due November 15. If any of you have any question concerning this grant, you can ask me now or you can send me an email. But there is no change to the grant guideline except for the accountability piece with the tri-annual reports.
Great, thank you. We did receive a question, and we're going to address it pertaining to WAT grants. So Scott is here to respond to that question. The question is, how will we document what WAT grant training has begun within the 90 days?
All right, thank you for submitting that question. We don't have a specific way that we would be documenting the training beginning within 90 days per se, as much as we will be paying attention to the reimbursement requests as they come in, and certainly maintaining a higher level of contact with each of our grantees. The entire purpose behind that requirement being that it's a little bit unfair to the rest of the consortia or to the applicants who may have a plan ready to go, training to begin within that 90 days. It's unfair to them to not have the same opportunity to compete for grant dollars as someone who throws their hat in the ring early and has no plan available that's really going to begin within that 90-day period. So really, we're going to be in touch with each of our grantees, and if we're not seeing things happen or hearing about things happening within that 90-day start time, certainly we're going to be in touch with you to figure out how we can move things along and make sure that everyone's outcomes are successful. So thank you for that question.
And then the follow-up for the part of that question was developing markets.
So the question received was, if we are beginning a new program, is it possible to submit a grant to support the new program development in 2 categories, such as career pathways and developing markets?
Well, I can address the developing markets piece. I guess it would depend on what you mean by program development. If you mean program development prior to approval of a program, the answer would be no. Program development, as far as the other things we mentioned in that category, the answer would be yes. So I guess I would tell you as an ed director, program development to me means you don't have a program yet and you're creating that, so that would not be covered under developing markets. But if you had curriculum you were developing with an approved program, much like we mentioned before, those type of development activities would be included. I hope that helps.
And we'll have comments from Career Pathways grant managers as well.
And from the Career Pathways piece, as we discussed earlier, that it's really difficult to develop a career pathway for a program that has not yet been approved. It doesn't mean that you couldn't do it, but let's say that that program that you're developing a career pathway for does not, for some reason, get approved. That would not necessarily be a good use of funds. If you have a program that's already developed and you are developing the career pathway, and then you take a look at the new markets and those pieces, you can connect those two somewhat, but I would not recommend that you develop a career pathway for a program that doesn't exist.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, at this time, just wanted to point you to the slide that indicates where the grant contacts are for the grant guidelines, and then the website as well. All right. We did receive another question. Can match be in kind on all categories? And the response is no.
Each individual category treated.
So please pay attention to the content of the grant guidelines for each category and the specifics therein. Any other questions? Okay. That being no more questions, feel free to, like I said, feel free to check the website for the resources page for the recording, as well as the information, the Q&A that will be posted on the website. Feel free to also review the grant guidelines in preparation for your application. With that, we will conclude this webinar, and feel free to respond to grant managers pertaining to any questions that you have. Thank you.